energy research. And so she is on the front line of the next energy transition. And so I think, thank you so much for joining us. It's terribly exciting for us that we have you here today. I mean, the way this is done is Andris and I will torture you with some questions, but please feel free to go off into any tangent that you feel helpful. So the first question that we would have is a fairly sort of general one, which is, you know, the Green Deal targets are the minimum that we need to do in the light of the IPCC conclusions. They're almost an acceptance that the 1.5 degree target is not really within, it's not really going to happen anymore. But even 2 degrees, but it's enormously ambitious to cut what, nearly 30% of your CO2 in just 10 years. And so obviously R&D is going to be absolutely front and center of this in order to do it. So can you give us an overview of what funding is going to be available? What's going to be the rhythm of scale of calls? How is this going to work in practice? What are the opportunities?
Mute. Voila. Ooh, complicated. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the nice words. I'm not sure I deserve them, but okay, thank you. Then maybe you allow me, before I go into the technicalities, to a remark. I am a civil engineer, but I'm also an economist. And something I have observed is that we have a tendency to work by extrapolation. The breakthrough changes in our societies are rarely anticipated. And when they are anticipated, people don't believe it will happen. So we are exactly facing this type of approach where we say we can do it. And most of the people say, come on, it's too complicated. You will not succeed. But if we do believe that we will succeed, then we will succeed. And that is, I think, what is at the core of the message of our president and at the core of the message we are trying to pass in the Commission. So going now to the technical answer, the more technical answer. Yes, it is ambitious. And I explain why it is so ambitious. It's true that it needs investment in research and innovation. If you look at the research and recovery and resilience fund, that was an interesting lapsus on my side. So the RRF, you will see that it is supposed to be spent very quickly. So why are we going to speak about research and innovation, which is a long-term action? Because the investment we will fund in Europe are going to stay for 10, 20, 30 years. They are important investment for most of them. And they are public investment, which are a longer return rate. We have already tried to adjust part of our way of working to short-term things through the Green Deal call that we have published using the leftover from Horizon 2020. And we adjust that fully to the Green Deal objectives. Now, for the future, now that we have already did that, it's published, what we see is, first of all, we need a massive rollout of renewable energy. Energy is 3/4 of the impact on the climate. That's as simple as that. You can try to reduce the consumption of the cars, you can try to adjust, but at the end, the issue is to use a clean energy, whether it's for agriculture, for industry, and so on. So the top priority, for me at least, should be an absolute increase, something which is difficult to anticipate now, of renewable energy. And for that, research and innovation can do, let's be simplistic, 2 things. The first one is to address breakthrough technologies. So these are preparing for the next decades, let's say, finding new technologies already. And these are low TRL, of course, they are beginning, but they could change the situation. Meanwhile, we have to do more classical research. And we are trying to balance in our next work program the breakthrough approach with the more, let's say, quick support from research and innovation For instance, to improve the efficiency along the energy value chain, to also take lessons from demonstrations so that we could help the industry to deploy what we need in the energy value chain, so that the use of demonstration, support also the definition of standards and norms, because they are based on the scientific evidence, sorry. And last but not least, I am flagging every time the coming challenge, which will be the circularity, because the resources of our planets are not without limit. At one stage, if we speak about changing 1 billion cars in the EU, just calculate how much it will cost if we use rare materials. And I'm only speaking on cars. I'm not speaking about deploying thousands of windmills, whether offshore or onshore. So all these changes should follow a circularity by design approach. Otherwise, we are creating the next decade challenge. And it will be very difficult to solve because you cannot recreate the resource of our planets. Then what we will do in Horizon Europe, we are trying also to influence the direction and the speed of this transition, and to give the business some orientations. The role of research innovation is to foresee the future. Of course, we made mistakes. I mean, everyone is making mistakes in anticipating the future. That's normal. I love reading science fiction, and when you read science fiction of 30 years ago, then you can see that some things were really, really good and some others were totally ridiculous. We don't feel ridiculous in research. We have to search everywhere. And then we provide with a kind of food stock, something where industry can pick up and member states can pick up, national authorities, and they will use it. So that explains a little bit that we don't focus the research approach uniquely on one direction. We focus it on an objective. The objective is mitigating the climate change. But the objective is also serving at best the people, because at the end is what is in the treaty. So we are trying to find a balance between the various domains where we have to work and the various types of instruments. If you can see, we are using the missions, which are just targeting achieving one objective that we call, between brackets, the man of the moon. I mean, I would say the woman on the moon, but that's personal. The man on the moon, and then you find a way to achieve it. This is typically a mission. It's cross-cutting. We also try to set up partnerships, and there are two types of partnerships. One is with the industry, classical, but the other one is a bit new. It's with member states and associated countries. And one of these new partnerships is on clean energy transition. So we expect that that will help the member states to give a new boost to the approach like the one of the set plan and develop cooperation. We fund a third, member states fund 2/3. So they need to commit themselves. And the best commitment is when you have to put money, of course, because it costs you and you are responsible. We also, of course, you know about Next Generation EU and the recovery plan. And the European Green Deal will be at the heart of the recovery plan. I see, because I'm an old lady, I mean, I've been working in the Commission for many years. I see really the extreme importance of this success. The fact that the recovery plan is not trying to come back to the previous situation. It's not only giving money to compensate the impact of the crisis. It is providing with support to orient with this type of money towards a new objective. And that's rather new in the approach. I'm not sure if I would have been reading that 10 years ago that I would have been convinced. But now people are convinced, and this is an enormous success. So we have in the line of the Green Deal, we have presented quite a lot of strategies. I heard about some, let's say, reactions saying, okay, these are strategies. What are you doing in reality? Well, these strategies are just paving the way. We need to implement them. That's very true. We will not implement them only through legislative work, and that also makes a difference. We are trying to blend the funding to make links between the various type of instruments we could have. We have an hydrogen strategy, and in this hydrogen strategy, you will see that first of all, there is a 3-steps approach, which is something very concrete, realistic. And second, that we speak about various instruments and how to mix, blend, synergies, if that word exists, synergies them. We have also published energy system integration. The next to come are renovation wave for the big issue of deep renovation of building. The next also is offshore energy at large, not only wind. And of course, sooner or later, we will have to do something extremely relevant on renewable at large. Meanwhile, we have also issued the taxonomy, and it's awfully detailed, complicated, but it is awfully important too, because it is a way to assess whether we go on the right direction when we do the funding. The last point is just, I would like to remind, I'm not sure I'm very right, I'm sorry, on the amount itself, on the percentage, but in my memory, the European research and innovation accounts for around 4% of what is spent in the EU for research and innovation. It means that we don't work by the amount. We work showing the way, but we cannot do anything if we are not joined by the national funding and by the industry investment. So it's critical that the citizens increase their ownership in the research and innovation, but it's also very critical that the industry believes in us and believes the way we show and invest in it. Not only because the resilience of the EU will need some readjustment in the industrial policy, clearly, but also because that will design new markets. And new markets means, of course, new jobs. So I stop here. I hope I was not too long. I don't hear you.
Yeah, no, not at all. Thank you, Hélène. That was absolutely terrific. I really loved some of your comments about the, and in fact, your comments, at least to me, mark a step change in the way that the Commission focuses energy policy, research and horizon. The way that you focused absolutely on the joined up approach between the energy research and that have a very clear objective driven direction or approach. I love the fact that your first words were about renewables and renewable electricity, because obviously that is going to be the backbone of our energy system. And I loved what you said about it has to be based on scientific evidence. Can I ask the following? We've seen the first 1 billion call and the fact that it's focused on short to medium term results. When we did the 2020 objectives, we had lots of aspirations in terms of turning our ambition, our world leading ambition, into manufacturing at home, patents at home, jobs at home. And we've been partially successful. In relation to wind, we have the world's leading wind industry, but in terms of PV, for example, we kind of lost that one. And I wonder, to what extent are we intending to really use our research policy to make sure that we develop the industry of the future in relation to next generation PV, hydrogen, wave, or all the rest of it? So what can we do, or what's the Commission intending to do to make sure that the research ends up in jobs in Europe?
Indeed. Well, it's a very complicated question, but I will build maybe on my previous experience in the industrial technologies. The role of research and innovation is not to provide money to existing technologies, except to improve them. But even though our role is to anticipate and to invest in the future. I think it's a good mantra. We invest in the future, by the way. The example I would take is the batteries. I was at the beginning of the work on the batteries, the alliance and batteries. And initially, the request which was coming from the industry was, could you please give us money because we want to become competitive with our competitors, especially in Asia. And we said, it's not really the challenge. The challenge is that you become competitive in the next technology. So the next technology could be drastic improvement in the current one, or it could be totally new technology. And in the Alliance now, the role of R&I is to prepare for the next technologies to come. One point maybe to reinforce, and that's why the example of batteries is so important. Because when we made an analysis based on the indication given by the industrial side, we made a rough analysis on the various costs, the labor cost, the energy cost, the materials cost. We discovered that the role of the labor cost is not that much important and is decreasing. The competitiveness is more and more on the side of the materials. Where to find the materials? How much to pay for it? Are we depending on materials? And that's why, by the way, the Commission intends to, or will propose, an alliance on materials. It's not enough to try to capture the mines. In Europe, we have very few rare materials, but we have brains to find a solution to replace rare resources by recyclable and abundant resources. And that will change the competitiveness, and that's where research could help. So that's why I mentioned that the circularity will, for me, be the next challenge, because it is closely linked to the competitiveness of our industry. If you can replace rare materials by recyclable, substitutable, reusable materials we can find everywhere in Europe, it increases our resilience, of course, clearly, but it also reduces the cost of these materials, and it increases, because we are innovative, it increases the competitiveness of our industry. And that's where research has a critical role to play. Having said that, there is also a kind of misunderstanding. When we speak about resilience, we do not want to create a fortress Europe. That's not the view. The view is to look at the critical steps of value chain. If I take the example of drugs, because it speaks to everyone in the current timing, the drugs are based on basic molecules, and we have lost 80% of independence on basic molecules. So the drugs could be produced in Europe, but they need absolutely something which is no longer, or quite no longer, produced in Europe, and here begins to be the problem. So this assessment of critical steps is at the basis of the industrial strategy. We're not going to do everything. We're going to be sure that our economy can resist to crisis. That's the first time, and here research, of course, can help. There is also, I would like to be also a little bit more open on that. I know it's honestly not in the briefing that I received, but I've worked quite a lot in international. We should not be a fortress. I insist on that. International cooperation is enriching. We are developing a new European research area, but that we have to be open to the world. The only thing is to not to be too open that it is so detrimental to our interest. But it does not mean to be closed at all. This is not the value of Europe. And something also we can learn from the experience is that an industry is capable to switch quickly from one sector to another one. So we have to develop the agility of the industry to be able to cover the needs which we did not anticipate. That's also why the research and innovation on the industry is so important, that we help the industry through improving processes, improving circularity, improving also skills, the quality of the workers. This is so important. It's a package. It's not only one thing. And research and innovation is part of this package. I'm not sure I really answered your question on that.
No, you absolutely nailed it. Thank you, Hélène. I've got one more question. Then I've got one more question. Then I'll pass to Andris for his final question. And I'm afraid it's going to have to be about hydrogen. I absolutely loved the fact that you focused so much on renewable electricity, which is going to have to be 80 to 90% of our energy system in 2050. And I mean, hydrogen is so much flavor of the month. I'm expecting to go to the ice cream shop and find hydrogen flavor any minute now. But it's very easy to get distracted from the main job, which is renewable electricity. But still, I've got to ask you the hydrogen question, haven't I? Which is, so couple of questions in relation to hydrogen. Where do you see hydrogen in terms of the overall priorities of the Horizon program over the next 5 years? Given the fact that, okay, it's extremely expensive. Andris and I have just finished doing a peer review of hydrogen costs and the ETS switching cost of getting hydrogen to replace hydrogen as a feedstock. We get to anywhere between 70 and 100 at the moment, and to get it in as a fossil fuel above 200 on a best case scenario. So, I mean, it's really expensive today, and the costs do need to come down. So, number one, what is the approach that we're taking in order to focus on this and get costs down? Secondly, are you colorblind? Because we see in the Commission's hydrogen strategy that green is the color of the hydrogen ice cream that I'm going to be eating at the moment. And you know, part of this study, we on the basis of consensus figures on expected costs, it's likely to be an expensive option over the next X years, not necessarily because of the capex cost, but because renewable electricity will be scarce. Let's call it that. And you know, we'll need blue hydrogen and certainly CCS connected to steel over the next 10-15 years to get rid of the steel before it goes to hydrogen or electricity. And pyrolysis, which can also be a zero carbon hydrogen source and can also produce graphite that can be used in soil improvement and as an essential, a critical material. And according to the numbers, although it's a very emerging technology, and although BASF and Wintershall and loads of other people are starting it, it's way off maturity. What are we going to do on hydrogen to get us there?
No, I'm in a way colorblind, yes, but not in that domain. How may I begin here? As I said, research and innovation is not going in a tunnel, in a channel. It's just, we try to open possibilities. So telling, one mistake would be to say, our priority is green hydrogen, so you do only green hydrogen. Or our priority is this technology and you do only this technology. In research and innovation, we have been resisting very much to this type of approach. We can give a priority, but it should not be exclusive, because otherwise we would never find breakthrough ideas. The ERC, the European Research Council, is working exactly on that. People look, search, they don't know what they're going to find. So research is much larger than a simple tool for a policy. It doesn't work like that. And that will be really a big mistake to do this. Having said that, on hydrogen, how does it apply to hydrogen? In the strategy for hydrogen, you will see that we have a 3-steps approach. We recognize that there is no possibility to have only green hydrogen for the time being, or clean, 100% clean hydrogen, because I will set aside the issue of nuclear electricity. As one of my colleagues said, when you see an electron, it's not clear whether it comes from renewable energy or from a nuclear plant. And that's very clear. I mean, I don't know how to do it. So even putting that aside, we cannot produce enough green hydrogen. Now, the question we faced when we discussed on the strategy was also that, okay, we want green hydrogen. We have more or less a series of options. One is to continue with blue hydrogen, or even in some cases, not very blue, but to use it to develop the hydrogen economy, to make people and industry being used to use hydrogen, to develop the equipment to use it. The other option was to really switch 100% to green hydrogen and import green hydrogen from the countries which could produce it at a reasonable price. Now, as an economist, I had a problem with that. I have to say it bluntly, because we perfectly know that the cost of transport is not always matching the environmental and social cost. So what is the issue? What is the value or producing renewable hydrogen outside of the EU and then transporting it with vessels or means which are using fossil fuel? The overall record is bad. But the same for electricity. It's very good to have electric cars in cities instead fossil fuel cars, or let's say electric vehicles. But if this electricity is produced from coal or fossil fuel, where is the overall benefit? The benefit is for the city, but then it's polluting elsewhere. So it's a very simple approach, but it means that we have to pay attention that the overall record on the value chain on hydrogen is positive for climate, and not only the green hydrogen itself. That's very important to have this calculation, because it is also linked to the coming reform on the ETS. Now, if I look on the different sort of hydrogen, it's clear that green hydrogen is not competitive. Generally speaking, renewable energy is still not enough or not sufficiently at a high competition level. And of course, the decrease in the price of fossil fuel will not help. This is a side effect of the crisis. But what we see is also that we have to work twofold. One is indeed to increase the quantity, because you have the economy d'échelle, an upscaling effect, yes. But the other line, sorry, is to increase the efficiency of the value chain, from the production, from the initial renewable energy source till the end use. The efficiency is the same for electricity, by the way. We have a lot of progress to do. We lose a lot of energy along the value chain. And of course, when you speak on hydrogen, you add another step, because you come from renewable electricity to produce hydrogen and so on. So we're trying to invest in both sides, and we have put a clear indication in our future partnerships that we should work to reduce or to increase the competitiveness in price of green hydrogen. But pending that, we know that we have also to live with blue hydrogen for the time being, because we simply don't have enough green. But that doesn't change the fact that in the longer run, we want green hydrogen. On the CCUS, it's not only linked to hydrogen. There are a lot of domains where CCUS is needed, and we will continue to work on that. It's a firm decision. Now, hydrogen is not the only source of energy we have to develop. I know that biofuel and e-fuels are raising questions, but it's more a question of framing. And let's be clear, there are a lot of applications which will not be available using electricity or hydrogen very quickly. And we need to find an alternative to the fossil fuel. So yes to CCUS, because we need it. Yes to green hydrogen, and then I don't find any contradiction in both, because CCUS has also other uses. And if they are a side effect of the production of hydrogen, then they can use the technology we develop.
Brilliant.
A bit
Thank you,
pragmatic.
Hélène. I'm now going to pass to Andris for the final question, but from my personal point of view, thank you so much. That was absolutely awesome.
Hélène, actually, I will have two big questions, and you definitely could choose which one to use. One is how to balance new developments with new technologies. We have questions from Dr. Ruzena. In essence, she's more focusing on bioenergy, but you can argue it's always the issue that when you start to develop something, you have side effects. It's like in medicine, but in medicine there are testing periods. With other things like bioenergy, it's not exactly like this. How to balance the sustainability and this clean energy drive. That is the first question in general. And the second is where I very much support you in your new Green Deal call, where you say, well, there should be clear, visible results in the short to medium term with a perspective of long-term change. The question is how to define these short and medium-term results. We have had such a debate during my time as energy commissioner, and I lost this debate because it was questionable, cost objective or deployment objective. And nowadays, I think on generation side and even on hydrogen side, you could do this. But on sustainable transport, for example, or on energy efficient buildings, or on industry, perhaps also could be how you could replace fossil fuels. So what would be the best system to really to have general support for this short and medium time results that could be accepted by society, because there will be always some controversy about it. That I understand. None people think the same, but still you need to clearly prove that this project deserves support because it falls under these expected results. So these two big questions, and that's you can choose how you start and which one you keep as a second. And thank you, Hélène, for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for making me thinking further. On the side effect of bioenergy, yeah, it's always the same issue. First of all, you have side effects which are good, side effects which are bad. You know the story of the microwave, which was invented for something totally different. You maybe know the example of the liquid screens, which were invented but not used because there was no application, and then we recovered it years after because we found an application at the end. So I don't think we could quote that an innovation is good or bad. It just it needs to go together with the analysis of the impact that such innovation could have. And this analysis of the impact should be revised because the situation is changing. So I know it's not a very clear-cut answer, but for me, science is not something which you say, no, we don't do that because it's negative. We say, okay, it could have this negative impact, we need to mitigate. That's fully different. And this is example of bioenergy. It could have very negative impact, clearly, but we need to tackle this negative impact. And again, for that, for me, and this is something I've been pleading very strongly for, we need to develop much more the integration of external costs like social and environmental costs into the decision making at the EU and national level. That's the core issue, because what we do is we mitigate after, but we need to integrate. Maybe I take an example on that. This is the example of circularity. When I arrived in this domain of materials, we were analyzing after what was how to recycle the innovation, the new materials or the new product we were developing in a project. And I said, it's not the way. The way is to, since the beginning, make an assessment at every step of the potential circularity and change the choice of the production system, the choice of the materials, and so on. This is circularity by design. We should have external cost by design. This is very complicated, but this is what is more or less in filigrane of some actions of the Green Deal, especially on the ETS. So that's why balancing the side effects, it's opening a more generic issue on the external cost and how to integrate it in our choices, not forbidding, but just our choices. On the other question, the indicators, I have to say I cannot answer that much on the indicators. What I see is that we have a big issue with transport. That's clear, because this is a sector which does not decarbonize. So classically, and I'm now again taking my gap of an economist, when you apply policies which are partly or more than partly going to restrict the offer, specific part of the offer, and you don't see any strong improvement, you have to raise yourself the question on whether this policy is the right one. And when you speak about the society, let me give you an example. Maybe it's better for me to look by example. I fully understand and I fully support that we have to reduce the pollution, to reduce the impact on the climate, to reduce, 30 years ago, I was developing a program to put the containers on the train and not on the road. So it's something which is in my heart. But I am a woman. That's very important. But that's the example. And I would like to take the example of what we call the caring mom. The caring mom are women who have kids. And they spend from kids being 4 years old till 18, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. They spend a lot of time in carrying them to dentists, dancing lessons, tennis lessons, sport lessons, birthday with kids, and so on and so on. I think everyone having kids knows the story. Then they stop because kids are grown up. And after a few years, they do the same with the parents, to go to the hairdresser, to go to the dentist, to go to the party with old friends, and so on and so on and so on. What solution do we bring to them? I take this example, which looks absolutely silly, I agree, to say that we need to look at the needs of the people first. It's not to tell the people adjust to the system. It's just look at the people and find the solution. And I think research and innovation has a capacity to propose for a solution, whether they are technology or they are social or they are business processes. But we need to find a solution. When I see in the OECD indicators that around 17 to 80% of the population at a moment of time is not able to walk easily or bike, and neither to take public transportation if they could not sit or they need help to enter in the bus or in the subway. I ask myself, what do we do for these people? It could be temporary, it could be definitive, but a fifth of the population is not something to be neglected. So what do we do for people? And that's a question which we should raise all the time. Can we be intelligent enough to find something for people? And then I come to your question on indicators. How do we have an indicator on that? Because even if we are extremely successful for the climate, at the end we do it for people, isn't it? Or am I wrong? I mean, I can fully be wrong.
No, you are fully right. But anyhow, this way, it's a way to get there. So it's never simple driving like we have now, for example, with COVID responses. So it's it's very difficult ride, to be honest, and definitely we would wish all this success to the commissions. That is definitely extremely important in these times, but also with future engagements. And Hélène, we have been very, very lucky to have you here. So we wish all the success in your work. It was really great answers, and our time has run out. I admire that you agreed to this conversation, and I assume that you will allow us to come later on, because these calls that you make now, a new program for next period, are extremely important, and the way how it will work will determine the future of Europe, and perhaps in some cases also outside Europe. So it's a really big engagement, but you are right, we are making that people accept these choices and endorse these choices, and RNA is a crucial element in it. Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody who joined us, and goodbye from me and from Christopher. Thank you, Hélène.
Thank you so much, Hélène. Bye, folks.